I stepped into my garden at dusk and found my daughter's boyfriend waiting at the gate. I thought it would be an awkward chat about schedules or curfews, but one sentence he whispered beneath the crepe myrtle changed how I see loyalty, love, and my own place as a mother. Before I dive in, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. What city are you in right now? I love seeing all the places you're joining me from. The evening had turned that soft, honeyed color that makes everything look gentler than it really is. My tomatoes still wore tiny crowns of dust. Fireflies stitched slow green commas through the phlox, and the sprinkler hissed its patience as along the edges of the lawn. I just set down a basket of basil and lavender when I noticed the silhouette by the arbor gate, broad shoulders, hands clasped, the sort of stillness that looks like listening. Luke. He was in a plain gray tee and jeans, hair a little rumpled as if he'd argued with the wind. 27, polite to a fault, and the boyfriend my daughter, Jenna, had loved steadily for a year and a half. He'd never come to the house without her, not once. That alone fastened a small, bright pin of worry under my ribs. "Alexis?" he said, as if testing whether my name would break the quiet. "Garden's open," I answered, because you can't be a mother for long without learning how to make an invitation sound like a boundary. You look like a man who rehearsed a speech and lost half of it on the way here. He smiled, thin and sheepish. That obvious. Only to someone who's rehearsed a few herself. Luke stepped inside and closed the gate behind him with careful fingers. He didn't stride. He approached like you approach a skittish dog or a memory that only lets you hold it if you move slow. We sat on the old wooden bench beneath the crepe myrtle. The bark peels aside there in papery scrolls, like the tree is forever trying to write a letter and never quite finishes it. "I didn't want to text," he said. "Good instinct. Text is for directions and grocery lists. Everything else should try for a sky overhead." He let that settle. The sprinkler turned off with a click, and the sudden silence made his swallow audible. "I need to tell you something, and I'd like you to hear it first," he said. "Before Jenna. Not because I'm going behind her back, because it involves you two. There's a narrow alley of seconds when your mind races ahead and trips over a dozen catastrophes. I saw all of them. A job in another state, a mistake he couldn't undo, a diagnosis stamped in the hard language of medicine, a ring box in his pocket that would change my kitchen table forever. My palms warmed. I wanted, fiercely, to be the kind of woman who could handle any of those answers without flinching. "Tell me," I said. He looked at the grass. "Your basil smells like my grandmother's porch. She used to tie bundles with twine and hang them upside down in the laundry room right next to her aprons. Every summer smelled like pizza without the guilt." He laughed through his nose, embarrassed at the detour. "Smell is the back door to the soul," I said. "Use whatever door gets you inside." He nodded, inhaled, and finally lifted his eyes to mine. There was a shine there, not tears exactly, but something faithful to the idea of tears. "Jenna is the love of my life," he said. "That part's simple. The part that isn't simple is how to love her well when she's tired of being compared to you." Compared to me. The words landed with a quiet, surprising thud. Of all the catastrophes I'd conjured, I had not prepared for a mirror. "I didn't realize." I began, and then stopped, because the truth was, maybe I had realized. Maybe I'd seen the way Jenna's mouth went flat when someone praised my roast chicken, or my old habit of mending the knees of jeans, so the stitches made little constellations. Maybe she'd heard the relatives say I was so capable and translated it into an indictment. Capable is a heavy coat to hand down. "She adores you," Luke said quickly. "That's not the problem. She feels like she's walking into rooms you already organized, like she's always going to be the second draft." I thought of the pantry I'd alphabetized last winter, spices marching like proper soldiers. Cardamom, cinnamon, cumin. I thought of Jenna rolling her eyes, gently, lovingly, but still an eye roll. How many small, tidy habits had whispered to my daughter that love should look like competence? "Luke," I said carefully, "are you here to ask me to be less myself?" He flinched. "I'm here to ask how we can help her be more herself. And I'm here because, well," he rubbed his thumb over a callus on his palm, "because I did something unusual today. I turned down a promotion." That's not a small thing. I know. It was a good one. More money. A team. But it would have meant 60-hour weeks, and I'm not going to build a life with Jenna where I keep proving I can climb ladders she doesn't want to sit under. I want time to pay attention, to show up, to build something that looks like us. He reached into his pocket, and everything in me tensed again. He didn't pull out a ring. He pulled out a small, flat tin, one of those old balm tins with a hinged lid. Inside was a sliver of paper, folded twice. He offered it to me like an apology. "I found this when I lost my wallet last week," he said. "It's from the night I met Jenna. I'd scribbled a note to myself while I was waiting for her to come back from the bathroom. Don't try to be impressive. Try to be honest." The paper was soft with wear. The words were not neat. I could see the tremble in the lines of the pen. I felt something old in me. Something pride had been holding taut. Loosen. "Honest, then," I said, folding the paper and setting it in my lap. "I've been competitive. Not with you, with the idea of you. I tell myself I want Jenna to have a love that's healthy and kind, but sometimes I behave like I'm auditioning to keep a role no one is trying to take away. I don't know how to step back without feeling irrelevant." The confession startled me by how right it sounded in the air. Luke didn't rush in to comfort me, which made me trust him more. "I think," he said slowly, "relevance isn't a seat at the head of the table. It's being the recipe card everyone keeps reaching for." We both looked toward the kitchen window, where a faded index card with my mother's meatloaf directions lived under a magnet shaped like a pear. Recipe cards survive because someone scribbles notes in the margins. Less sugar, more thyme. Try with turkey. The card doesn't demand the spotlight. It just makes the next meal better. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Your blessing," he said, and the word was old-fashioned and earnest enough to sting my eyes. "Not for a proposal, not yet. For a conversation. I want to ask Jenna if she'll move with me into the little bungalow on Maple Street. The one with the porch swing and terrible wallpaper. I want to do it in a way that makes her feel chosen as herself, not as a draft of you. And I want you to know I'm not stealing her away. I'm asking you to help unlock a door she keeps thinking is only yours to open." I pictured the Maple Street house, white clapboard, black shutters, a porch swing that cried like a violin when you leaned back too fast. It was 3 blocks from here. Not far enough to feel exiled. Far enough to feel like adulthood. My mind started building rooms. Sunday breakfasts, Jenna's laugh bouncing off new walls, the sound of a lawnmower like a heartbeat on summer afternoons. "Luke," I said, "do you know what my mother told me when I left for college? She said, 'Go make the kind of home you'd invite me to without cleaning first.' I didn't understand it then. I thought she was talking about dust. She was talking about honesty." I took a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You have my blessing to talk to her. You have my blessing to be brave." He nodded, but something in his shoulders stayed tense, a question still caged. "What else?" I asked. "That wasn't the sentence I came to say," he admitted. "I came to tell you that Jenna has been scared, not of me, of being seen as needy. She thinks you only respect stoic women. Last week, she cried in my car after her shift, and then apologized for 10 minutes because she should be stronger. I told her strength isn't silence, but I don't think she believed me. I thought, if he said it, she might." The garden had grown duskier, and the first crickets tuned their instruments. My throat tightened with the kind of guilt that isn't useful, the kind that adds weight without adding wisdom. But the truth found its footing. I taught her to carry heavy bags alone, I said. I didn't always teach her to ask for help before her hands hurt. Luke's mouth quirked in a way that wasn't quite a smile. You taught her a lot of good things, too. She makes a grilled cheese that could win a peace treaty. I laughed, unexpected and grateful. The night air felt twice as soft for a moment. Okay, I said. Here's what we'll do. You talk to her about Maple Street. Tonight, if you want. Tomorrow at the latest. I'll talk to her about strength, with a definition that doesn't punish tears. I'll tell her I'm learning to. That this. I gestured between us. The bench, the tree, the summer, isn't a contest. It's a relay. And I want to pass the baton without pretending I could run the whole race myself. He exhaled, long and shaky. I didn't know if I should hug you, he said, the corners of his mouth brave enough to consider a grin. Consent is poetry, I said, an old joke from a workshop I used to teach, but I meant it. If you ask, and I say yes, the hug becomes a sentence we write together. I stood and opened my arms. Yes. Luke didn't crash into the hug. He entered it, gentle, respectful, brief. More like a promise than a possession. I felt the solid human fact of him, warm shoulder, steady breath, and thought how love can move through a family in shapes that don't set off any alarms. When we stepped back, something had realigned in the air. Not a big, dramatic shift. A hinge oiled, a door that suddenly didn't groan. He picked up the small tin from the bench and tucked it into his pocket. I'm going to walk around the block and call her, he said. I want to get my words right without pacing a hole in your lawn. Tell her I'm home, I said. Tell her I'm listening. He nodded, then paused near the gate, looking almost boyish in the porch light. Alexis? Yes. Thanks for meeting me here. In the place that smells like pizza without the guilt. Bring me back my tin, I said, pointing to his pocket. He laughed and let the gate click behind him. I watched his back grow smaller and then disappear past the hydrangea hedge. The night pressed its cool hand to my cheek. I sat down again and listened to my own breath, to the crickets, to the way quiet can be full of newly useful things. Inside, through the window, the kitchen waited, the pier magnet, the recipe card, the sink that is both burden and blessing. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear cooled against my lip and tasted like the ocean I haven't visited in years. I wasn't sad. I was unarmoring. The phone on the porch table vibrated once. A text from Jenna. You home? Yes, I typed. In the garden. A few dots. Then, Luke says he wants to talk. Is everything okay? I looked up at the tree, its peeling letters rustling, as if finishing the letter it had been writing all these years. Everything is okay, I wrote back. More than okay. Come by the gate. I set the phone down and faced the arbor, where porch light and moonlight braided themselves into something gentle. The basil breathed out its last sweetness of the day. Somewhere down the block, a screen door slapped shut and then held. I didn't know exactly what would happen next, but the feeling in my chest was as surprising and steady as a heartbeat on a pillow. I was not losing my daughter. I was making room. And what Luke had said, what he had asked, with that odd, old-fashioned word, had pressed a new doorway into the walls of our home. I wiped my eyes on the heel of my palm and smiled. The gate latch lifted. Footsteps. A familiar silhouette. As Jenna stepped into the garden and looked at me, really looked, like we were the same species of woman, learning and trying, I felt the moment before a conversation stretch, bright and fragile, like the very thin ice of a lake right before it sings. The night folded itself tighter around my garden, but something inside me had opened. When Jenna walked through the arbor gate, her eyes searching mine with that fragile mixture of hope and caution, I knew this conversation would shape not just her path with Luke, but my path as her mother. She crossed the lawn slowly, holding her cardigan shut against the cooling air. Her hair was loose from its tie, falling in uneven strands that made her look younger than her 25 years, as if she were still the girl who used to press wildflowers between my cookbooks. She stopped just a few feet from me, her arms crossed now, as if she needed the barrier. "Luke said you two talked," she said carefully. I nodded. "We did. And before you worry, it wasn't about betraying your trust. It was about loving you better." Her shoulders shifted, a defensive shrug she must have practiced since high school. "He told you I cry too much, didn't he?" The question went straight to the ache Luke had revealed. I took a breath, steady, not rushing. "He told me you felt you couldn't cry in front of me. That you thought strength only counts if it's silent. Jenna, that's on me. I taught you resilience in the way I knew best, but I didn't always leave room for vulnerability. That doesn't mean your feelings are weakness. It means you're alive and honest and strong enough to show it." For a moment her mouth trembled, and I saw the girl who once scraped her knee on the driveway and refused to come inside until I praised her for not crying. That little girl had grown into a woman still trying to earn my approval by holding her pain hostage. Her eyes glossed. She blinked hard, angry at the tears. "I didn't want you to think less of me." "Less?" My voice cracked. I stood and closed the space between us, placing my hands gently on her shoulders. "Jenna, if I ever made you feel like tears lowered your worth, I failed to show you the truth. Tears don't subtract from who you are. They multiply it. They make your love deeper, your courage broader. You're not less. You've never been less." The dam broke. She folded into me, sobbing, and for the first time in years, she let herself cry against my chest like she used to after nightmares. My own tears matched hers, quiet and steady, soaking into her hair. We stayed that way for minutes, maybe longer. When she finally pulled back, her cheeks streaked with salt, she actually laughed, a short, incredulous laugh. "I thought I had to outdo you. All this time. Compete with the perfect Alexis who never needed anyone. And here you are crying like the rest of us." "Perfect Alexis is a myth," I said, smiling through my own tears. "Real Alexis is just a woman who still forgets the dryer sheets half the time." That laugh of hers turned genuine, warm, and full. I hadn't heard it so free in months. Then she looked down at her hands, twisting her cardigan tie. "Luke wants me to move in with him. On Maple Street. He says it's our place, not yours. That scared me, Mom. Like if I chose him, I'd be abandoning you." The words carried the very fear I had been carrying myself. That love is a pie with only so many slices, and each new piece leaves less for me. But now, with her face close, with her honesty flooding between us, I knew that wasn't true. "You wouldn't be abandoning me," I said. "You'd be expanding us." Love doesn't divide. It multiplies. If you and Luke make a home, I don't lose a daughter. I gain another porch to sit on, another kitchen where I'm welcome. You'll always be mine, but you're also yours, and you deserve the chance to build something that feels like you." Her lip trembled again, but this time she didn't resist. She hugged me tight. "I wanted to hear you say that." "And I needed to," I whispered. When she stepped back, her eyes were lit in a way I hadn't seen in so long, hopeful, brave, soft. She wiped her face, then grinned. "That porch swing on Maple Street is awful. It squeaks like a wounded bird, but maybe that's where our story starts." We sat together on the bench under the crepe myrtle, shoulders pressed, the tree above us whispering in the night air. Fireflies sparked like punctuation marks in the dark. A text buzzed on her phone. "Luke, no doubt." She smiled, typed back quickly, then leaned her head against mine. He's coming back," she said.